This is Singapore, Canada, and America, three nations on different continents. But despite the distance, one disturbing truth connects them all. They're unraveling in exactly the same way, and the warning signs are impossible to ignore. Let's start where the cracks are turning into a full-blown collapse. Canada. In Toronto and Vancouver, housing prices have spiraled so far out of control that a normal family can no longer even dream of buying a home. Bidding wars push properties hundreds of thousands above asking. Even doctors and lawyers are finding themselves priced out. And it's not just Canada. In Singapore, million-dollar HDB resale flats are now the norm, while younger Singaporeans feel completely locked out of the market. Meanwhile, in America, Wall Street corporations are buying entire neighborhoods, leaving millennials and Gen Z stuck renting indefinitely. This isn't random bad luck. It's part of a global system failure. And it's the same story unfolding across borders. Today, we're going to break down the 5 reasons why young people in Singapore, Canada, and America can't afford homes. Reason 1, the global housing bubble. In Singapore, HDB resale flats, once designed to be affordable public housing, are now breaking the million-dollar mark. What used to be a stepping stone for young families has turned into a speculative market where the average buyer is competing not just with neighbors, but with investors betting on property as a guaranteed win. In Canada, the picture is even more extreme. Toronto and Vancouver are now among the most unaffordable cities on Earth. Families walk into open houses only to find 20 or 30 competing offers, many of them driving prices hundreds of thousands above asking. For younger Canadians, the idea of buying a home without family help is almost a fantasy. And in America, the story is familiar. Since the 1970s, housing prices have risen more than 400%. Wages, by comparison, have grown just 17%. The result? Millennials and Gen Z are staring down mortgage payments that would swallow most of their income, if they can even qualify for a loan in the first place. Here's the deeper system-level insight. Housing is no longer about homes. Around the world, real estate has been financialized. It's treated as an asset class, like gold, stocks, or cryptocurrency, a place for investors, corporations, and even governments to park money and watch it grow. But when homes are treated as investment products, the people who actually need shelter are pushed to the margins. That's why the bubble keeps inflating and why young people keep getting squeezed out. Reason 2, foreign and corporate buyers. There's another force making homes more expensive, and it's not just local demand. It's the global flow of money. In Singapore, even with strict regulations, foreign investors have found ways into the property market. For wealthy buyers from China or Indonesia, Singapore real estate is more than just a home. It's a safe vault for money. This added pressure on limited land drives prices even higher, making it harder for ordinary Singaporeans to compete. In Canada, the story is infamous. For years, foreign investors from Asia and the Middle East snapped up properties in Vancouver and Toronto, sometimes leaving them empty. At one point, more than 1 in 10 homes in key neighborhoods were foreign-owned, not occupied. The government eventually introduced a foreign buyer's tax, but by then, prices had already hit stratospheric levels. And in the US, the trend has taken a darker turn. It's not just foreign investors, it's corporations. Mega firms like BlackRock and Invitation Homes have quietly bought up entire neighborhoods. Their business model is simple: turn would-be homeowners into permanent renters. The more homes they own, the higher they can push rents, locking young Americans into a cycle where owning is no longer an option. Here's the bigger truth. When homes are treated as investment vehicles, citizens become collateral damage. A roof over your head becomes less about security and more about competing with billion-dollar balance sheets. And ordinary families simply can't win that game. 3, wages versus costs. The math doesn't work. At the heart of the housing crisis is a brutal equation. Wages are crawling, but housing costs are sprinting. And when the math doesn't add up, young people lose. In Singapore, a fresh graduate might earn around $3,500 a month. On paper, that looks solid. But when an HDB resale flat costs over $1 million, even 2 working adults can't realistically keep pace. The cost of certificates of entitlement for cars, rising everyday expenses, and stagnant wages compound the squeeze. In Canada, median household income hovers around $100,000. Sounds comfortable, until you realize the average home in Vancouver is $1.7 million. That means a family would need to save for decades just to put together a down payment. And all the while, rent is climbing, eating up the very savings they need. And in the US, it's the same treadmill. Since the 1970s, worker productivity has soared by more than 60%, but wages? Up just 17%. Meanwhile, home prices have jumped more than 120%. That gap creates a cruel reality. No matter how hard young Americans work, the finish line keeps moving further away. Here's the system-level truth. Housing has detached from economic reality. It no longer reflects what people earn. It reflects how much financial speculation the market can absorb. And until that changes, wages will never be enough to bridge the gap. Reason 4, government policies fueling the crisis. Here's something most politicians won't admit. The housing crisis isn't just about markets or supply and demand. It's about government choices, policies that, intentionally or not, have fueled the very fire they claim they're trying to put out. Take Singapore. The government controls almost all the land. The narrative is always the same. We're a small island with limited space. While that's partly true, the release of land is tightly managed, creating cycles where supply never quite matches demand. This strategy keeps property values climbing, which looks great on national balance sheets, but not so great for a 28-year-old trying to buy their first HDB flat. Over decades, what began as a system to ensure affordable housing has transformed into a market where million-dollar resale flats are no longer an outlier, but a headline that repeats every week. Now look at Canada. The government proudly celebrates immigration as a pillar of national growth. And it's true. Immigration fuels innovation, diversity, and economic expansion. But here's the math. Nearly 98% of Canada's population growth now comes from immigration, while housing construction lags far behind. The government keeps the immigration tap wide open, but the pipeline of new homes is clogged. The result? Demand massively outstrips supply, especially in cities like Toronto and Vancouver, where international students, new families, and investors all compete for the same limited housing stock. Politicians often blame foreign buyers or zoning laws, but the deeper truth is, this imbalance was baked into policy. And then there's America. For decades, U.S. housing policy has tilted the playing field toward investors and landlords. Tax breaks on mortgage interest sound like they help families, but in practice, they overwhelmingly benefit wealthier homeowners with bigger mortgages. Rental income gets favorable tax treatment, fueling landlord profits. Government-backed mortgage subsidies meant to help buyers also inflate prices by making cheap credit widely available. And zoning restrictions in cities lock entire neighborhoods into low-density housing, ensuring scarcity. Put it all together, and you get a system where hedge funds can buy entire suburbs, while ordinary Americans struggle to scrape together a down payment. The uncomfortable insight is this. Governments often see rising property values as economic success. Higher housing prices mean wealthier homeowners, stronger consumer spending, and bigger tax revenues. But what looks like a win on paper is a crushing loss for the next generation. Policies built to stimulate growth end up accelerating inequality, dividing society into two groups: those who own assets and those who will spend their lives renting them. This isn't incompetence. In many ways, it's by design. And it raises the most important question. If housing affordability is politically solvable, why does it keep getting worse? Reason 5, the managed decline of the middle class. When you zoom out, the housing crisis isn't just about property. It's about the slow, managed decline of the middle class. And nowhere is this more visible than in Singapore, Canada, and America. In Singapore, the middle class was built on the promise of affordable public housing. Generations grew up believing that with hard work and stability, you could secure a home, start a family, and climb the ladder. But today, that ladder is crumbling. Fertility rates are among the lowest in the world, partly because young people can't afford the financial burden of a home. The Singapore dream of stability through ownership is slipping, and that has consequences not just for families, but for the entire social fabric. In Canada, the dream has shifted from when you buy a home to if you ever buy one. Surveys show that nearly a third of Canadians under 40 believe they'll rent for life.
And when the wealth gap between homeowners and renters stretches wider every year,
entire generations are recalibrating what adulthood and security look like. And when the wealth gap between homeowners and renters stretches wider every year, you get a divided society where opportunity is inherited, not earned. And in the U.S., the transformation is even starker. Homeownership rates among young Americans
Their business
have collapsed
model
compared to previous generations.
Renting forever.
Why? Because homes aren't being sold to families anymore.
And
they're being
more
bought
will
by
live
corporations. Companies like BlackRock and Invitation Homes own tens of thousands of properties, and they're not selling them. Their business model is to lock people into renting forever. That means fewer Americans will ever build equity, and more will live paycheck to paycheck, paying rent to billion-dollar firms. It's not just a housing story. It's the story of wealth being funneled upward. Here's the system-level truth. This isn't a glitch. It's the blueprint of a new economic order. Housing policy, corporate behavior, and financial speculation all push us toward the same outcome. A world where owning is the privilege of the few, and renting is the permanent reality for the many. The middle class, once the backbone of modern democracies, is being hollowed out, not by accident, but by design. History shows us where this road leads. In ancient Rome, wealth concentrated at the top while ordinary citizens lost their stake in society. The empire didn't collapse overnight. It unraveled slowly, generation by generation, until the system could no longer sustain itself. The uncomfortable question is, are we watching the same unraveling happen again, right now? Singapore, Canada, and America may look different, but when it comes to housing, they're falling the same way. Homes have shifted from shelter to financial assets, wages can't keep up, and governments have quietly fueled the crisis. The result? A generation priced out, forced into permanent renting while wealth consolidates at the top. In Singapore, it's million-dollar HDBs. In Canada, bidding wars. In America, Wall Street landlords. This isn't just bad policy. It's a global system unraveling. And the real question is simple. Who will be left behind when the collapse is complete?